All right. Looks like we are now live. Sorry for being a few minutes late today, guys. We had some last minute changes in our co host duties.
Yep.
So I think the good news is a lot of people will probably recognize not only our guests, but also our special co host for today, Mr. Kyle, or Mr. Horizon Insider, Kyle.
Yeah, I preface my name just in case people don't know, since we kicked Steve to the curb. No, Steve's actually helping out, busy doing some other stuff, so I figured why not jump on and add some, additional input, insights, questions, or I can just sit here and, take it all in and enjoy it with everyone else as well.
Yeah, and for those that I'm sure a lot of people have seen Kyle in different Horizon Insider videos, on different buying guide videos, and you're basically our behind the scenes social media content master.
Yeah, I try to do a little bit of everything, and seems like, I've been with Horizon now 2.5 years, and every day I learn new stuff and taking on new challenges. So,
Yes, and we're joined today by a very special guest, Mr. Fitzwalker, who's from the Hobby View channel on YouTube, which we'll get into in a few minutes here. Thank you very much for joining us today, Fitz.
Hey, thank you for inviting me. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. I see, real quick, I don't know if you can see any of the comments in the chat. Oh, I guess probably Fitz can't, but I can. So Jim Burke said hello, Fitz.
Jim, yes, Jim and I go way back. Hey, Jim, thanks for joining us.
Very cool. And I don't know if Jim remembers me, but I've been on eZone and RC Group since the very beginning. It really helped me a lot, especially when I was younger and electric was still new to everybody. eZone Mag, now RC Groups, it changed the world. It really did.
That was a real groundbreaking thing he did. So he'll forever leave that mark on the modeling world.
Yes, and so we'll say hi to a couple other regulars. We got E-Powered RC in here. Hey, man, good to see you as usual. Mood G 162010. You'll have to give us your real name there one of these days so we can remember that. And everybody else that's joining us, our regulars, our newbies. We are streaming live on the Horizon Hobby Facebook page and on the Horizon Hobby Products YouTube channel today. I did want to point out we have been going live on the Horizon Hobby Products YouTube channel, but starting from our next show on, we're going to go live on the Horizon Hobby YouTube channel. So real quick plug, for those that don't know, we have 2 YouTube channels. Make sure you subscribe to both. And there's a reason for that. And Kyle, can you explain kind of what's the difference in the content between the 2 channels?
Well, it's not ideal, to say the least. If we could do it over, we would do one. But I think originally it started out because we wanted kind of a content, basically somewhere to dump all our videos for products. So that's kind of, I believe, why the original products channel started. If you're familiar with it, that's where, say every product announcement and or buying guide kind of goes. Basically, I kind of take that as like the professionally done in studio prepared stuff, whereas kind of the other channel is kind of us using the product almost. That's where you get the Horizon Insiders, the on the fly. It's kind of the more creative, Valentine's Day stuff, Halloween type stuff. So that's kind of the difference to justify it. It's not ideal, but we're kind of too far down the road to, unless we can get them all to go to one, then we can put them together. But
yeah, I would say if you to simplify for some guys, the Horizon Hobby Products channel is the technical, the nitty gritty details, and then the Horizon Hobby channel is the fun stuff. It's the good times, showing the product, in a deeper way from the inside. We'll put it that way. So yes, awesome. Well, thanks again for joining us today, Kyle, and thank you again, Fitz, for joining us. And so some of you guys that are here today probably know Fitz from his YouTube channel, Hobby View. So Fitz, can you tell us how long ago you started that channel and kind of how it came to be?
Sure. It's, believe it or not, it's been about 5 years. I didn't realize it was that long, but I started 2015, I think early 2015. And it was something that I had no intention of starting. I had no intention of doing my own YouTube channel. The genesis was somebody asked me to make a video about a plane and how to set it up and get it working. And I did that, and I was when I did that, I was like, well, how do I approach this? How do I do a video? I've never really done a video professionally, or professionally, for public consumption like this before. And so I thought, well, let me approach it in a certain way. I thought about how I liked certain videos were done, how I didn't like other videos were done. I said, well, I can do it my way, and I can really be OCD and kind of just do things the way my pet peeves. I can address my pet peeves in certain videos. I won't name any names or anything like that. Just, it's just, there's lots of videos on YouTube, and some are better in other ways and good and bad in other ways. So I thought, okay, well, I can address those pet peeves of mine and make a video, see how it works, see how it was received. And to my surprise, it was received really well. People really liked the video, and so I was asked to do more. So I continued doing on, and I was fortunately able to do some product reviews with different companies and stuff on my own, and just kind of have fun with it. I was lucky that I had a friend of mine who flies, is also really good at photography and videography work, which is really important. And so we collaborated and would do different things. We would experiment. Some things worked better than others, but for the most part, it was really successful. And the channel just kept growing, and I had fun doing just my own thing. And it just evolved from there. I got encouraged to keep going. And so here we are today, still doing it.
Very cool. Very cool. And real quick, I want to preface this. We kind of mention this in most shows. You guys are welcome to make comments and to kind of talk back and forth within the comment section. And we are going to try our best to answer some of your questions. We're going to hold off the questions that we ask Fitz from you guys or that you ask us specifically. We'll answer some of those here in a minute. So Richard Hinchy, I see a comment you got here. Maybe Kyle, you can follow up on that one there. We're going to talk about the STX2. I think you know that one pretty well, that product pretty well. Yep. And a couple other things. So yeah, guys, so be sure to save your questions towards the end. 45 minutes, an hour from now, we'll get to the kind of open forum questions. We'll go from there. And so Kyle, I don't know if you've seen Fitz's channel, but he's up to 18,000 subscribers.
Yeah, and that's not something you do overnight with just throwing a video together. Yeah, it's kind of funny. I had seen him before, just watching. That's part of my job, is kind of just seeing what other people are doing, and kind of like Fitz was just saying, taking what you like, kind of weeding out what you don't like. So I had seen some of the videos, and then today I was brushing up a little bit, just kind of seeing what the most recent videos were and stuff like that. So
you didn't run away screaming?
No. Well, one of the videos that caught my eye, Fitz, recently, it was, I think, the Hangar 9 Hellcat. That thing's at like 350,000 views.
Yes, something really strange happened. The YouTube algorithm gods smiled upon me or something, and I had two videos: the Hangar 9 that you mentioned, the Hellcat, and the P-47 that I also did some months ago. Both of those just for some reason just blew up. I started getting a whole bunch of messages and notifications, like what's going on? All these comments and views, and something happened, and it just exploded. And those are two videos I spent a lot of time on, so they're very highly produced, so quote unquote. And so it was a good way to introduce people to the channel. But I was really surprised how well it did. And yeah, the viewership has just exploded. And I still today I got comments on it, even though it's been out for a little while. I continuously get all kinds of comments. People really like what I did and comment on my voice, and things on the model. They liked some of I injected some humor into the build, and they caught on to some of that. And it's been really a lot of fun, and it's a great flying plane. In fact, I flew it this past weekend at a Warbird event. And I got a lot of good comments about the plane, and it was really nice to bring it out and show it to people.
It is an interesting thing that Kyle, do you have any idea why that happens sometimes, where you might get a couple thousand views on a video and then all of a sudden, boom, 350,000?
I mean, a lot of it is subject matter. Some of the kind of the same ideology of like the builds, the My First ARF project, which ended up being like 7-8 videos. We still get comments. We get people watching. A lot of it is people need, they want some reassurance when they're putting something together of that nature. But as far as, sometimes we'll just have a silly video that through no fault of our own, just, the algorithm picks up on and, it just takes off. And it's kind of like a snowball effect. Once it's rolling, it just keeps building, which is really frustrating. And I'm sure Fitz could probably attest to it as well. Sometimes you'll spend hours and hours and hours editing something and it's just a flop. And then something else you'll just throw together just takes off. And you're like, This is
Yeah, it's the cruel, harsh world of YouTube. In fact, that happened. I had a few years ago. I did a Halloween video, and that was me and my cameraman are real proud of. We had a lot of fun doing it. I thought it'd be pretty popular, and it turned out to be not really all that popular. It just kind of semi flopped. It's still up, but we had a lot of fun doing it. We sort of did a Blair Witch kind of takeoff thing on it, and it just people didn't really gel to it. So it's like, oh well, okay. Oh well,
Yeah.
You win some, you lose some, I guess.
Yes. Yeah, that's the thing. You never know what's gonna take off in social media or in video media. You just keep trying, hoping for the best. At some point, you build a big enough audience, and then everything I think does well, which I think is definitely the case for you. I think all your videos get thousands of views now, right?
Yeah, they all do pretty good now. I generally get, at least a video should at least get a couple thousand views at least, and it just kind of slowly grows from there. So all the videos, I guess, relatively successful now that I have built up a user base, and I got some people that like me and look forward to my videos. They'll tell me, say, "When's your next video coming out?" So no longer, I was thinking, maybe I should put more cats in my videos to get more views, but I guess I'm okay now.
People do like cats. Some people do like cats a lot. That does help sometimes. So the funny thing too about I think all three of us, we've been making videos of different kinds for a few years now, and I think it's a learning curve for all of us. Not only editing videos, that's one thing, but also like the way that you talk on camera, what you say, how you say it, what you show, your like you said, pet peeves. There's little things that I do that I mention sometimes in my videos. Like I like to bring my throttle trim up, so my prop is always spinning on a scale airplane. So when I throttle off, it doesn't stop at the end of the runway. It looks funny, looks like my engine.
Your electric planes?
Yeah, I do. I know some people think I'm weird, but I like to bring it up. That's why I do it, because I saw some people question that. They're like, why doesn't your electric motor stop? That's so weird. And I had to explain it. So at any rate, it is kind of funny. And people make, comments, sometimes constructive, sometimes not so constructive about.
You got to tell them you're running a little rich, so you got to keep the idle up.
Yeah, yep. It could do exactly that. Yeah, exactly. Although a lot of guys now that are in the hobby, they've never had any experience with a gas or a glow engine especially. And that's kind of unfortunate, because it was a good learning curve for me. But I'll admit, I'm almost 100% electric now. I don't do anything gas or glow anymore other than turbines. So there is that. But yeah, let's get really quick. Let's talk about how you got started in the hobby. When did that happen? And then if you can tell us what your first aircraft was that you learned to fly successfully with.
Okay, sure. Let's see. How far back do I want to go? RC hobby or modeling in general?
I would say RC. We'll start there. Well, we'll talk
RC,
about modeling
okay.
and then jump into RC.
Well, okay. Well, I did start pretty early on with a family member. I had a stepfather that did control line, and so I tinkered with that a little bit as a wee lad, and I also did plastic models quite a bit. But RC was basically when I got into high school. I did some RC car stuff early on, but I was always interested in airplanes. Airplanes was my first love. RC cars was just sort of to placate me until I could get some airplane goodness.
Right.
So I started roughly in high school with RC models. So my first airplane didn't end so well. At the time, I lived up in the Northeast. In fact, I'm from Connecticut. I grew up there. And there used to be a show called The Ram Show that was in White Plains, New York. And I had a shop teacher, of all things, that was also an RC modeler. And he knew I was interested in models. Said, hey, do you and a couple other kids want to come with me to White Plains to go to the Ram Show? And I had never been there. And so me and a couple of classmates piled in a car with them, and we drove down. It was like an hour and a half drive or something like that. It wasn't that far, to the Ram Show. It was amazing. We're talking very late 80s. And that was the heyday of those type of shows. It was just, I never will forget it. That was just an amazing thing to go to see all the different stuff on display, all the swag you got, just all the manufacturers and all kind of stuff. So we're talking pre-internet day. So there's a lot of stuff you maybe see in a catalog or something, but to actually see vendors and touch the stuff. And there they had a swap meet. And sitting on one of the tables was this plane. It was a small, had an Enya 09 engine in it for $50 that was for sale. And I said, I had $50 in my pocket. And I said, I have to get that plane. It was kind of a low wing trainer kind of thing. It was, I think, a kit build. It was called a Pelican. It was kitted by RCM, had plans for it, and I think you could buy a kit of it. Yeah, there's a kit because I eventually got another one. And so it was already built, had the engine, didn't have any radio in it. So I bought that for $50 and saved up money for months to get a radio and put a radio in it, and got it running and went out to a schoolyard by myself. And you know how this is going to end. I was taxiing it around, and something happened. The link fell off, or something fell off the engine and went to full throttle. And all I could do was hang on for dear life. And it went up, kind of wallowed in the air, stalled, and smacked the side of a school building and dead on. And that was the last of that plane for a while. And so I actually taught myself to fly. So after that, I actually did get a couple other planes, which I also kind of destroyed and rebuilt, and they became more epoxy than plane. So to get to the end of the story, my first successful RC model was a General Lady glider that I actually built myself, built from a kit. These are really inexpensive gliders. They're actually pretty nice, although they have some weak spots. And I took the plane. I figured, okay, I can't fly, but I'm determined to teach myself how to fly. Let's try something that flies extremely slow, has no engine. I built the thing. I go to a school that's on a hill, and I just start chucking the thing off of a hill. Short flights, can't really get into trouble too much doing that. And the flights kept getting longer and longer and longer as I'm chucking this thing. Then I put an 049 power pod on it, and I would fly. I flew it on an 049 power pod, and I literally flew the wings off this plane. Because one day I was doing barrel rolls in it, and it came down in 3 pieces because the wings had snapped in flight. And at that point, I went back to some of the other planes I had just half destroyed, and I was able to successfully fly those. So yes, my first successful plane was a General Lady glider that I built myself, and I had a lot of fun with it.
That's very cool. And Kyle, I'm guessing you probably don't know what a Gentle Lady glider is, do you?
No.
So well, I want to get to Kyle's first airplane here in a minute, because he started in a very different way, because he got to kind of start in modern day times. But my story about the Gentle Lady is that I had a Dynafite Butterfly, which was the 99-inch wingspan. It was set up for like an 09 to a 15. And my dad and I bought it used, and I put an I think it was either OS or Magnum 25 on it, which is way too much engine. And I'm up there doing rolls, like a rolling circle, and the vertical stab broke off. And now I had no vertical stab, no rudder, and had no ailerons. So we're just watching this thing doing circles. And I'm like, what do I do? And the guys are just like, I don't know, shut the engine off. So I shut the engine off. Anyway, we're flying at a schoolyard, and it landed on a baseball field with kids playing baseball. They saw it coming down, and they said it just circled around the field for a little bit, and it landed about the second base, and it rolled up on the pitcher's mound. And so I'm driving all around trying to find it. I see all these people piled around the pitcher's mound, and they're holding up the plane. And I'm like, there's my plane. So I got the plane, and I couldn't get plans for the Butterfly, but a guy gave me a set of plans for the Gentle Lady, and he said, I think the vertical is the same size and approximate shape. So, just build that. So I built that vertical and rudder, put it on my Butterfly, beefed it up with some cross supports, because I knew I was going to be flying it pretty hard. And that was my Gentle Lady experience. But for those that don't know, Gentle Lady is a 2-meter glider, I believe, 78 inches, something like that span. Yeah. And an 049 power pod was something you kind of stuck up on top. It basically was like a pylon with a mount that you had a little Cox 049 engine on, or, TDO 51 or whatever it was. And it had a built-in fuel tank, and you just started it. It went full throttle, and you threw it, and then you flew it until it ran out of gas.
Yes. Or you flew it off.
Yeah, it's an old school thing. So real quick, Kyle, what was your first airplane ultimately? It was just recently, right?
Yeah, so I didn't actually start flying until like the end of flying season 2018. And that was, basically, actually, you guys would know, Tom Cogswell had a mini apprentice, and he's like, yeah, I'll buddy box you, whatever. And, to backtrack a little bit, I've been driving and racing RC cars since 2005. So orientation and all that, I didn't really have to learn that. I just had
coordination. You had it.
Yeah. And then I've played, both, real flights and then, flying games in general. So I kind of know what inputs do and things of that nature before I even started. So by the second flight, Tom had already walked away, and it's kind of a funny story also to that. Well, he walked away with the master transmitter, and when he set it down, it flipped to master. So I'm like, I don't have this plane. And it's just disappearing towards the interstate behind Eli Field. And I'm yelling, Tom, I have no idea where he is. So then he flipped it back and we had to get it back. And then like flight number 3, I'm like rolling over, getting cocky, and then eventually ended up, just setting it down upside down right above the runway. Cause I was like, I can do a low inverted pass. I see these guys do it all the time. And it was fine. It just, chipped the prop or whatever. So that was kind of my first flight. And then I think my first plane that I started really flying was actually the Valiant, which isn't necessarily a trainer per se, but that's kind of what I just learned with. And obviously I mentioned Real Flight. Without Real Flight and Safe, I wouldn't be where I am today. I can't even emphasize how much it helped, being able to use the technology, get your stick time, get muscle memory built up without actually having to sweat bullets while you're flying. So
yes. Hey, real quick.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Before I go too far, I was trying to block one of the guys in the chat that keeps talking about toes. I don't know what the deal is there. And I accidentally blocked a guy, Lee Davidson. I apologize if you see this later. Hey, Kyle, is there any way we can get him back? Lee Davidson, not the 737 fly guy.
I don't know. I'll have to dig into it. Did you block him from our page or just the stream?
I don't know. It was in the stream here, and I think he was from YouTube. So maybe we have to go to YouTube to fix that.
Okay.
I'm very sorry, Lee Davidson. If you see this later on, I really didn't mean to block you. I was just trying to get rid of the toe comments because it was kind of freaking me out. So anyway, sorry about that, guys. But yeah, so your first airplane was Mini Apprentice, and then what was the first airplane though that you like? If you feel like everything fell into place with?
It's kind of hard to say. I mean, I started flying the Fly Zone Rapide quite a bit, which was not a good choice. But we had put Safe in it. So I flew that a lot. The nice thing about that was it could pretty much do anything you want. It had enough power to get out of bad situations. It's, super responsive. So that is where I kind of really gained confidence a lot. And you can belly land that. So you don't have to worry about, landing in crosswinds. You can hand launch. So it taught me that skill as well. Good orientation, nice and stable. So that was really where I kind of gained real confidence. And then from there, it was just, if anyone's watched Horizon Insider, like I've say this all the time, but I don't think people believe me. A lot of times when you see me flying something, that's legit the first flight with it.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of times just me grabbing something and going and flying. And it's nice. There he is. Hi, Lee.
Sorry, Lee. I don't know if you saw. I didn't mean to block you. I meant to block someone else. We're glad you came back. We're going to try to get you unblocked on YouTube. That's my fault. Yeah, I was trying to block the toe guy.
But and then finally, the Carbon Cub S Plus. Believe it or not, I got one of those used that we just we had laying around, and I didn't even use any of the GPS stuff. I just needed something that had some sort of safe panic recovery and, some AS3X, and then just, going out practicing, learning what not to do more often than not. I haven't completely obliterated a plane yet, knock on wood. So that's coming at some point. I just hope it's not one of the nice ones, like the Hangar 9 stuff I've been building lately. So.
Right. Just wanted to say something. You mentioned a simulator, and I've always been a proponent of simulators. After one incident I saw some years ago, we at our flying club, a guy came out I had never seen before, and he was flying his helicopter around. And I was like, "How long have you been flying a helicopter?" Because he was doing some hovers and some circuits and forward flight stuff. And he goes, "Oh, this is like my third flight with it." I'm like, wait, what? Third flight flying helicopters? He goes, "Yeah, I've been practicing on the simulators for several months." And then it's like, oh wow! So simulators work really good. It really help you build the muscle memory and the skills. So I highly recommend to this day that people get a simulator to
especially for skills.
Yeah.
So Fitz, did you end up getting a simulator later in life after you learned how to fly?
Well, yes, because at the time simulators were really primitive when I first started flying. To give you an idea, the big simulators were meant for Commodore 64 and Apple II. In fact, Dave Brown simulator. In fact, I first tried one at that RAM show, and it was like watching a slideshow. I mean, it was like 2 frames a second or something. Yeah, I was like,
it was polygons.
It was all polygons. It was really crude. So, I mean, I give kudos to them to try to develop something like that, but the processing power of the 8-bit computers back then just really weren't up to snuff to really do all that well. So it was brute force. I just taught myself, through, crash and burn, keep going, crash, fly, crash. It wasn't until later, really, that I started simulators, probably in the late 90s, early 2000s, was when they really started.
Yes.
As the PC powers, as you remember, there was some competing versions. And the main reason I did is because I was getting back into helicopters, and I really wanted to improve my skills. And so that was the best way to save a lot of money. Was a simulator to fly helicopters at the time. So that's when I really got back into them and started with
I can't stress it enough, guys. You probably hear us talk about it all the time. And of course, we reference Real Flight because it's a great simulator and we sell it. But, I taught myself to fly helicopters on Dave Brown, on that simulator of all simulators. And it wasn't, physics didn't exist. There were no physics. Basically, it was really just teaching me the eye-hand coordination and the orientation. And from that, my first flight, I hovered a whole tank of fuel. Second flight, loops and rolls. Third flight, inverted on the deck. And people are like, how is this possible? And I tell them, simulator. And years later, I used Real Flight to learn to fly 3D airplanes. And I can't tell people enough. Airplanes, helicopters, drones, buy a simulator, preferably Real Flight. It will save you money. It will save you time. I really, truly think you'll enjoy the hobby more if you have it. Plus, they're fun because you can try, there's 160 different airplanes on a Real Flight. So
plus, even if you're experienced, you can practice new maneuvers, as well.
Yeah. Oh, I did see one question. I were going to wait till the end for a questions, but Michael Klein had a good one that I think, I don't even know if you can even answer it. You may not even know the answer to it there, Fitz. Let's see. Where did it go? Shoot. Well, Michael Klein asked here we go. How many planes are in your hangar?
Well, we don't talk about Fight Club. So
Exactly.
There's probably easily, I hate to say, about 50 planes, maybe.
That's
put
pretty
it
good.
this way. It's easily about 50 planes in various forms of ready-to-fly conditions, plus kits and other stuff. So yeah,
I see some stuff behind you that I recognize. Let's see if I can make you the big person, the big fish. Somehow. I don't know. I can't tell. No, but I think I see. Is that a Mini Fontana X behind you? And a Habu above you?
Yes, it is. Very good. There's a Habu 32 right there. X. Do you want to move the camera? I can if I want. So there's the Habu 32. I got that recently at a show, and I remotored it for 8S, and so I've been I need to do some minor repair work on it, but I wanted to go fast.
Oh, it's going to go fast. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they've set some speed records or pretty close to it in the Habu. So I saw that. It's like, oh yeah. That's
it moves, yeah. That one, and that's the Habu 32X, which is the later version, which I think is a little faster yet. So yeah, that's a cool airplane.
Yeah, it's got the swept wings on it. So yeah, I really was happy to pick that up. You saw the Mini Fontana. There's a you can kind of see a Chaos.
Yes. Yep.
Where am I looking? Here we go. There's the tail part of it. It's a Chaos there. Chaos 60, really, really nice flying plane. And I got just random stuff. There's an old House of Balsa A7. Highly modified A7. I converted to an F8 sport scale some years ago. And just random stuff. There's you can see some helicopters back there.
Yep.
There's more stuff around that you can't see, but yeah.
And a B-17, it looks like above you?
Yeah, this was a guy here in Texas makes these short kits of, they're basically with the foam you get at Home Depot, the blue foam. Yep. And he makes these short kits, a rum builder. And it says, I think a 70-something inch wingspan, 4 motors.
Oh, it's that big?
It's big. Yeah, it's really big. It's bigger, much bigger than it looks in the picture. So yeah, that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, so the Chaos is one of my grandfather's favorite airplanes of all time. He used to fly some pattern way back in the day, I believe, and that was one that he had always spoke very, very highly of. And I've flown some over the years, and I can understand why guys liked it so much.
Yeah, basically, it's a pattern plane, basically.
Yep. Yeah. So you learned on the Gentle Lady, you flew the wings off of it, and that was your first kit-built airplane. And then did you build more kits? Did you start going to buy ARFs? Where'd you go from there?
At that point, for most part, I built kits. I built a lot of kits over the years. There wasn't a whole lot of ARFs. I had 1 or 2 ARFs. I had a Kyosho ARF for a while. That was kind of neat that I had for a long time. But most of, until probably the 2000s, most of the planes I had probably were kits that I built. from wood kits, scratch built stuff. I like to build kits. Since I built as a kid, I built a lot of free flight stuff. So it wasn't anything for me to sit down and throw something together and build it up, either from a kit or from plans or that kind of stuff. I used to get plans from the RCM magazine. Remember that? Ravenful Modeler. I had to come to their catalogs. I said, "Well, this looks neat." And so over there, I've got a kit that I built probably 20 years ago of a quickie or something like that. Just I like models, so I mean I don't distinguish. I like ARFs, kits, whatever. But I did do a lot of kits. I can't say which one is the next after that particular plane. It was just I just kept going. I became a candy lover in a candy store, and I got a job at a hobby store in high school. So I had access to, the owner was like my drug dealer. He says, "Hey, if anything you need, just take what you want, mark it down, and we'll settle up at on payday, and I'll give you a discount on stuff." And there was a couple times I came out with a negative paycheck. So
that happens to some people at Horizon too. It does. I know Cody's done that back in the day when he first started. Yep, that was an interesting time. So you were all in at that point, and you were pretty young. It sounds like you got in the hobby pretty young. And so did the hobby ultimately lead to your career kind of that you have now?
Yes, pretty much. It's because of the airplanes. I like the airplanes, like the models, and I like building stuff, and I like researching about the different planes and how they worked. I became kind of an armchair aircraft historian aficionado. I love the history of aircraft in World War II and World War I and that kind of stuff. And so that basically led me to a career in engineering in the aerospace engine field. So I went to school, actually went to school at a school specializing in aerospace studies of various types. And I studied aircraft electronics and stuff like that. So that directly led to something to do with airplanes and spaceships. I wanted, when I was in high school, I said, "What am I going to do with my life? What kind of career do I want?" I said, "Well, I want to do something with airplanes. I love flying model airplanes. I love learning about airplanes. I love looking at airplanes. I love sitting in airplanes. I love touching it." Well, I won't go into there, but I really like airplanes. And so that led to me. I said, "Hey, best way to go is something." I liked engineering. I like building things, and engineers would like to build and fix things. And so it was kind of a natural progression into that career.
Very, very cool. So a lot of people I think that I've met over the years that have been in the hobby a long time started early on in the hobby and then ended up in a career that was somewhat related to their hobby. Sounds like yours is pretty directly related. So can you tell everybody where you work now?
Now I actually work at NASA here in Houston at the Johnson Space Center. And that's a lot of fun. I previously worked at Lockheed at their F-16 facilities. Well, at one time was F-16s, but now they build other, F-35s and whatnot. And so right out of school, I got a job working with aircraft, and that was a lot of fun too, because I became basically a flight test engineer for the most part, although my job did other stuff. And so I got to sit in mock-up cockpits of the F-16 and play with all the controls and stuff in there, testing different things. I got to go out to Edwards Air Force Base and help with flight testing and talk to the pilots and play with analyze aircraft data and see all kinds of neat stuff out there. And it was that was a neat place because that's where they build. Sorry about that.
It's NASA.
Yeah. Hey. Oh man, tell you about it. I just got through meetings, marathons today at work. And there's a factory where they build aircraft, so I could walk the factory and see the aircraft being built and watch it.
That's cool.
Really nice. And then when this opportunity came up to work at NASA, I was like, "Whoa, that's really too good to handle." Because it would be nice to work at NASA Space. Who doesn't work with the space program? And in my job here, fortunately, I've been able to work with lots of different projects and programs to see some really neat stuff. And I don't know how much you want to talk about, but we're working on some really neat stuff for going back to the moon, and I'm involved in some of those.
Oh, that's cool. Very cool. Yeah, no, that you're welcome to talk about it, because I honestly think a lot of people that are in our hobby as a hobby still have a genuine interest in pretty much everything that flies and probably even space to some degree.
Well, I tell you, it actually helps out in a lot of ways, because I'm working on 2 projects right now. Since there's the a program called Artemis. If you're not familiar with it, it's basically the next generation Apollo, and it's the whole program to go back to the moon by hopefully 2024. So we have. They're building new launch vehicles. They're building new spacesuits. They're even going to build a new space station that's going to orbit the moon, a little mini space station.
Whoa.
And so they're developing all these new stuff. And so I'm working on projects, helping projects. My job kind of gives me oversight on different things. And so I'm working with people that are developing the new space station and developing the new space suit. Since our spacesuits are kind of old right now, the design, and so they want to update them to 21st century technology to help support walking on the moon and that kind of stuff. And so we're working on those things to build a whole sort of a space system, transportation system, to put people on the moon, to have a little space station they can rest and relax and refuel and that kind of stuff. And one of the things, for example, I'm sitting in meetings and they're talking about the battery packs for the new spacesuits, and of course they're all talking lithium battery packs, and I'm like, well,
I know all about that.
I know all about that stuff, and so I can not only have intelligent conversations, I can ask really interesting, insightful questions about how these battery packs are going to work. And we talk safety things, because these things, you don't want to go to thermal runaway. There's the dangers of using lithium batteries in space. So we want to control these kind of hazards. And so we can actually have really good discussions, and I can listen to what they're talking about and know exactly what they mean when they talk about charging and discharging and thermal runaways and all kinds of nuances with lithium battery packs. And that came directly from my experience with RC models. So even, and my practical experience can come in really handy versus a lot of people that may know a lot of the science, just battery experts who know everything. I can't tell them anything, but there's other people on co-workers and stuff that may not be all that familiar with how these batteries work, and I can explain to them, the nuances of working with lithium battery packs. So it comes in really handy.
Which there's a learning curve for people that don't know anything about them. I think most of people in our audience know they're not terribly safe if you're not careful. Hey, Kyle, have you ever had one go off? Catch fire?
Yeah. So, when I actually preface, I worked for Traxxas back in like 2012, and we were at events. We were charging batteries all day, and all it took would be one person to put a 2S on a 3S or vice versa, and not plug in the balance lead. And those chargers, they didn't care back then. It was just, okay, you think it's a 3S? I'm putting 3S voltage in.
Yeah.
And then back then, they're a little bit better now. They're still very dangerous, but it was flames, like you knew there was a fire. It wasn't smoke. It was like immediate ignition, panic type thing. So
that's very cool. So your experience isn't too terribly long ago, but still somewhat a while back. Fitz, then I think you've probably been using LiPos since maybe when I was like early 2000s.
Yeah. I remember getting some of the first packs that were not cheap.
Oh yeah, they were not cheap.
To see how far back I go, I actually had some of the early CoCams that came as a single cells, and I bought a bunch of them. And
what was it, like a 340 and a 1020?
Yeah, the 320 or something like that. Yeah, they were like 5C discharge or something. I mean, you looked at them wrong, and they would, they would peter out. But I took a bunch and I strapped into the side of a little helicopter. And I was able to have a 20-minute flight with this helicopter, just kind of flying around lazy flights. And it was an amazing thing to fly that long on battery packs. We were at the time using round cells and NiCads and lithium metal hydrides. But this was a pack I had to make myself. I had to solder on all the wires to the little tabs. Some of those tabs weren't easy to solder to.
No, they're aluminum.
Literally, they're aluminum. So I had to use lots of flux and sand them. And it was I could do it, but it was a pain in the you know what. And I literally like rubber banded these individual cells to the side of the helicopter frame and flew around like that. And I eventually made my own packs for airplanes. Some of the other packs, I forgot who came after CoCam. There was another one.
Thunderpower.
Yeah, it was Thunderpower. I had one of the early Thunderpower packs, and
there were some other small brands. Yeah,
there was another one. It was small. I don't know if they were CoCams, but they were a little small. You could make a little
E-Tech.
E-Tech. That's it. Yes.
E-Tech 1200s. Yes. They were a big deal. Yeah.
Those were really the first ones I started flying airplanes on. And it was a really interesting time where you're experimenting with these batteries and what works, how many parallel connections do I need so I can get enough power to fly this little Speed 400 plane or something like that.
Yep. So I don't think a lot of guys that are new to the hobby have any idea what we're talking about. But man, I
My
missed
day,
it.
we walked uphill both ways.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, back in my day, I had to rubber band batteries together and stick them on the side of my helicopter because they didn't fit right. But yeah,
Yes.
people have no idea. No idea.
Yeah, the
what we-
Cocams were really wide and flat, so the form factor was really almost unusable in many ways.
Yep.
But we found ways to use them.
Well, a lot of guys, some guys have heard this story. A lot of guys haven't. They don't know how lipos became so commonplace in our hobby. But Cocams were not made for our hobby. Of course, they were made for other applications. Cell phone batteries, things like that. That's why they were kind of thin and big, flat things. And then at Thunder Power, Charlie and I, many years ago, we were flying Speed 400 airplanes. So Zaggy airplanes are very popular, if you remember those back then.
Yes.
And they had that 2/3 sub A nickel metal or NiCad pack, like an 800 or a 1200 nickel metal. And we made the 2100 milliamp cell, which is 34 millimeters by 96 millimeters. That was the first custom made LiPo cell ever for our industry. We went and paid for the tooling to get that made in China at that time. At BYD was the factory. And that's the same footprint that the 2200 cell everybody uses today. That long and skinny kind of footprint came around because we wanted to make a custom cell for the RC industry. And back in the day, we used to sell those 3-cell packs for like $99, and we couldn't build them fast enough. It was crazy. Back then, for what it's worth, those cells cost us like $18 each. So we were paying like $55 for the cells. And then Charlie and I are sitting there like building them at night in his warehouse. And it was hard to build because you had the nickel, one tab is nickel, one tab is aluminum. You really couldn't solder them. So we had to buy, we bought spot welders. We were spot welding them together. And it was a whole thing. And then we would take a suitcase of them to like Ceph or San Diego Midwinter Electrics, and we'd sell them in like 5 minutes. It was a crazy time.
Yeah, I think I bought a pack out of his hands at one meet myself.
Probably,
in the early days. I think he was walking around, was like, I gotta have that for my helicopter.
Back in the day. So that's right. So you and I were talking about this a little bit earlier. We've crossed paths long ago in the helicopter world, in particular, electric helicopter world, because you were selling products and I bought some of those products. And so when did you get into helis, and was it always electric? Did you do glow helis?
Yeah, I did glow. Actually, I tinkered with helis for some time. I actually had an old shuttle from Hirobo for years, and I had something from Hobby Lobby called a Sport 500. That was actually my first helicopter because it was really cheap. And the problem was it was really cheap.
Yeah.
It kind of flew okay when parts weren't flying off of it, but it was really not that great of a helicopter, but it kind of got me interested in tinkering with helicopters. And then I was able to get a shuttle used from somebody when I worked at a hobby store. Somebody came in, they'd blown the motor. And so they almost gave it to me. He said, here, just give me some nominal amount of money. And then since I worked at a hobby store, I can get the parts for the engine. I had to replace some stuff in the engine, and I got it flying. And that was when I flew the most for some years, the early 90s. I kind of just try to learn to hover on it. It's about all I did was hover, some small forward flight. I ended up getting an old Schluter helicopter, if you remember those things.
Mm-hmm.
It was a really nice one. Again, somebody had sold it to me for a really good price. It was real high end. The problem was fine German over-engineering of the thing. It was really difficult to work on. Fantastic flying machine. I did fly around a little bit, but I was afraid to do anything with it because if I broke it, I had no idea how I was going to fix it, because it was, even though I had some instructions in the exploded manual, it was really complicated. It's like, how do you take the main shaft out of this thing? So I eventually sold that, and then I actually had stopped flying for a while. I'd stopped flying helicopters. It wasn't until I started going back to school, and it took me a while to get through school and stuff, and so I had to put that stuff aside. And it wasn't until probably the late 90s, early 2000s, I started getting back into when I started getting back into RC in general, and the electrics were starting to kind of come up, and the Speed 400 stuff was getting more popular. And I thought, well, what's out there for electric helicopter? I'd like to try it. And Hobby Lobby had the
Eco 8.
Eco 8.
Yeah.
That was my first electric helicopter. And that was probably the first really electric helicopter that actually flew really well. It was a little delicate, but it actually flew really well. It was pretty okay. Yes, I'm being the guy. It was very delicate. But at the time, you could understand the methodology that it had to be delicate because you're running It was
NiCad.
designed to fly on a brushed motor on NiCad, so weight
Yep.
was at a premium, and so they had to strip out everything they could to get the thing to fly. But it actually flew really well.
It
And once
did.
brushless and lithiums came about, it was actually a really high performance machine, relatively speaking, especially with a brushless motor on it. That really livened it up. So it was actually aerobatic when she did that.
It was, yeah. That brings back so many memories for me because my first helicopter in the mid '90s was an EP concept, and it didn't fly. The Kyosho electric helicopter, and I lived in Las Vegas, which is like 2,500 feet above sea level, and on a 7-cell car battery, it wouldn't even get out of ground effect. It would just kind of float around at about a foot off the ground for like 2 minutes.
Wow.
And then, so I got rid of that. Then a guy came in the hobby shop with the Hirobo shuttle, and it was brand new. He had put ball bearing servos into it and an OS32F, and he's like, $100. I put a gyro in it. I did some time. I bet about, 30 hours on Dave Brown, and boom, that was my first helicopter that flew. But I really wanted an electric helicopter. And so I went and got an EP concept again. I had learned a bit more about brushed motors at the time, and we put a brushed car motor in it, like a higher performance 16-turn car motor. And on an 8-cell battery, I could get it to fly. It looped and rolled even. And then I bought an Eco 8, and I put the same motor in it with an 8-cell NiCad battery, and it looped and rolled better because it was very lightweight. And then not long after that, I went to a helicopter fun fly, and I actually put a lower turn motor in it, and I put a 10-cell NiCad battery on it. And this thing, I could do rolls with it, and it was funny. You could see it was so flexible. You would see the head go before the frame and the battery. It was like,
Yes.
It was hilarious
Yes.
to watch. And so that was back in the day.
In fact, that's why I actually designed the reinforcement piece for that. The little piece you stick between the frames. Yes, I drew that up in CAD, and I found a guy in Massachusetts that did machine work, and he was also an RC modeler, so he kind of knew the kind of metals and nuances. So I hooked up with him and said, hey, I want this piece, and can you anodize it and do this kind of stuff and tap it for these screws? He goes, yeah, sure. And we worked out a deal, and that's where I came up with that little piece that just
I'm
stick
sure I
that up.
remember that guy's name. Doesn't he own a hobby shop now?
He may have.
Always
I don't remember his name.
Yeah, he used to sell parts for the Roby Iolo helicopter. If you remember
Talk
that?
about
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I know who that guy was. He had quite an accent, didn't he?
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure I remember who that was. Yeah.
And that got me the bug back to flying helicopters, and it just went on from there. Went on to some other German companies, started producing electric helicopters. Mikado, yes, I still have a couple. You can kind of see them there. I still have a Logo 10 and a Logo 20 hanging up over there, and some other stuff. And those became, like, I guess, second generation, really high performance electric helicopters. And some of the companies are still going. And so, and I got a bunch now. I got some E-flite helicopters, some of the blades. I got. It's funny. I actually bought a shuttle, a used one from somebody.
Just
for
nostalgia.
Just for nostalgia. It was in real good shape. Cool. I was like, I want to fly. My other shuttle is destroyed or something like that. I actually experimented with converting my old shuttle to electric way back when.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of sort of worked, but it wasn't really all that great. And then I kind of abandoned it because there was dedicated electric helicopters that came out. And so, but I was kind of, it'd be fun just to try, not to actually know how to fly. Let me try a shuttle again one more time as nostalgia, for giggles.
So real quick, before I want to talk a little more about helicopters, because I want to bring Kyle in on this, because I think he's gotten really bit by the helicopter bug. Do you guys, I'm going to ask both of you guys, do you know what this airplane is?
No.
Jacob, yes, can you see it on the screen here? Fits the question. Yeah, the Zenith. Do you know what that is?
Is that a home build?
Or
ultralight?
Yeah. It's quite possibly one of the ugliest airplanes I've ever seen in my life. But I got to say, I love it. I want one so bad. My grandfather has one partially built in his hangar. And, maybe someday I might get my hands on it and finish it. It's a really odd, STOL-capable home-built airplane. But I'm telling you, it is ugly. You should look it up, Kyle. I think you'll appreciate it.
Okay.
But hey, so Jacob, I don't know that we'll ever make one because it's so ugly that I'm not sure I could get the other guys convinced we absolutely need one in our life. But man, I'd be all for it if we could.
Yeah, I cheated and just looked it up real quick. It does look familiar. And you're right. I think it flies because it's so ugly the ground repels it.
Sad but true. I think sad but true.
But it's cool. It's got character.
It does. And there's various versions of it. There's one with wheel pants on it that's not as ugly. You put wheel pants on anything. I think you put wheel pants on anything, it makes it look better. But
That's true,
just
yeah.
personal
I say
opinion.
fix it, get it flying. That looks like it could be fun, actually.
It is a neat airplane. It is very capable. I mean, you can take off and land in like 50 feet. Well, maybe not that
Yeah.
little, but 150 feet. And so it's a neat kind of interesting stole. You know, stole's all the rage these days for a variety of reasons. And so that kind of brings me back to my point of the hobby has changed a lot. Almost every decade, there's a big wave in things. So in the 90s, it was, I think, ARFs came a long way. And electric kind of came on, but not strong. And helis kind of came on at the end. If you remember, like Thunder Tiger got real big with the Raptor helicopters, and it all kind of started steamrolling into the late 90s and the early 2000s. Then electric really caught on across airplanes, but even really more so in helicopters. And electric helicopters exploded. And that's in 2004 is when or 2005 is when we started the Blade helicopter brand. It was actually a sub brand of E-flite. And it exploded the market. Everybody had a helicopter at that point. And to be honest, electric was really the reason for it to be possible. We had micro helicopters, $200 ready to fly. You could fly it in your house, fly it in your backyard. And then we went up to bigger helicopters, you know, Mikado, and we had the big Blade helicopters. And that was, you know, mid to late 2000s were like the heyday of helicopters. It really, really was. So I miss those days because I was a heli guy. I was a big helicopter nut. I loved 3D airplanes and 3D helicopters. It was all the rage for me in the mid 2000s. So, but Kyle, you just recently kind of really got into helis, I think, right?
Yeah. So probably a year and a half ago is when I first really started getting into them. And a lot of that, again, is because of the technology. A lot of the groundwork you guys laid by, you know, struggling for almost decades, guys like me are able to reap the benefits of, because, you know, I was able to, you know, actually my first technical heli was the 70S, which is just a fixed pitch. You know, that's almost like a quad. Yep. But it helps you, again, do orientations and stuff. And then I went right to the 230S V2 and have fixed it / repaired it, I don't know, 30 times, 40 times. But the great thing about them is you can fix them. You know, you have to not be afraid to crash them is the first kind of rule. If you're afraid to crash, you're never going to get better, in my opinion. But everything's fixable. So, you know, you crash, you laugh it off, fix it. Obviously, it hurts your wall a little bit. But, yeah, now, you know, flying. What's that?
And your pride.
And your pride, yes, especially if it's, you know, we have a rather cynical group of people that are pretty much always out there whenever people are flying. So you learn by not really peer pressure, but by the oncoming wrath of garbage and laughter that will follow if you make a mistake. So,
well, it's going to happen. It's part of the hobby. You just laugh it off. Like they say, there's two types of airplanes, right? Those that have crashed and those that are going to crash.
Oh, that is sad but true, right? It really is. I've had some airplanes over the years that have never been crashed, but it's very rare. Almost everything ends up whether you dumb thumb it or you have like maybe a wheel falls off on a landing or something and then it tips over. You know, I call that a crash to a degree. But the nice thing about helicopters, and I think why helicopters caught on so well for a while, was that when you crashed it and you repaired it, it was almost like new again. Versus a lot of airplanes, unless you replace the parts that you break, if you repair an airplane, foam or wood, it's not quite always the same as original, right? You got glue, you got a lumpy finish now. But helicopters, man, just like a car. You wreck that thing into a curb, you wreck the helicopter into the ground, put all brand new parts on it, and it's like it never happened. It's kind of nice.
Yeah. Yeah, and I like that wind. I mean, you're basically flying like a fan around. So you can go out, you know, 20, 25 mile an hour wind, and you're like, whatever, you know, if you have enough power, that is. But, you know, I can take like any of the Fusion helis out. You know, Illinois, it's quite windy if you guys aren't aware. And, you know, there's a lot of days where I wouldn't really want to fly a plane. I'll just fly helis because you can just turn the fan whatever direction you need to go and just punch the collective and fight the wind.
Yep, exactly. So Fitz, you got pretty heavy into helicopters then. Did you kind of move into something else? Did something else kind of tickle your fancy more?
Yeah, I don't really fly as helicopters as much as I used to. It's been a while actually. I do tinker with them still, but not mainly into planes just because I've been so busy with the YouTube channel, and most of the stuff has been aircraft of different types. So I'm either building one, working on building one, or thinking about building an airplane. I got a backlog of stuff I need to work on as well. So I just really haven't had the time to really tinker with the helicopter stuff much, because I do want to. I actually have an Airwolf fuselage.
Oh,
And I want to
yeah.
put on one of my Airwolf. I was a big fan of the show, and I got a fuselage for, I think it's a 600 size fuselage, and I have all kinds of ideas on how I want to spruce it up and stick it on one of my airframes, but I just haven't had the time. I've just been so busy with all my airplane stuff because I'm again either making videos or building one. I'm working on a kit now. I do reviews for Model Aviation on occasion. And
that's right.
Sometimes they ask me if I have one on a desk now. It's going to be a future review for the magazine, and so I got to spend time building up. It's a wood kit, so it's going to take some time to get it done.
Why?
So it's just I just haven't had the time. So I've been thinking that lately. It's like I got to make some time to just pull one of these helicopters down. But I'm 95% airplanes right now, and I also help people. I'm an instructor at my club, so sometimes I go out and help people with their aircraft. Just past weekend, I went out to help a guy maiden he had a Corsair of some sort, and he said, "Hey, can you help me maiden this plane? I've never flown it before, and I'm just getting back into the hobby." So it's just and fly-ins, just I see lots of shiny things that
Yeah, I know how that works. And that's an interesting thing about airplanes. So I think that over the years, 3D helicopters, the goal was for all of them to fly about the same, to flip as fast as possible, to TikTok as fast as possible. So the variety kind of, I guess I stopped feeling like it was different. And that's what I've always loved about airplanes. They're so vastly different from some, UMX to giants. You can have the same model as a UMX, a midsize, and a giant scale, and they all fly different. They can all be a Cub, but they all handle very different because of those different scales. And then on top of that, you can have pattern airplane, low wing airplane, an EDF jet, a glider. There's so much variety in airplanes. And I think that's why I always get distracted by airplanes too. I love helicopters, don't get me wrong. I do wish we had more scale helicopters. And now that we're kind of past, I think so it was 3D helis and airplanes in the mid to late 2000s. Drones came on strong in the last, 5 to 10 years. I think that's kind of over now. So I'm a proponent I think we need more scale helicopters in the world. So if you guys agree, if you're watching this later on, or if you're watching this right now and you agree with that, please put it in the comments so we can show the powers that be that we need Airwolf with retracts, 450 size. I'd buy 2 or 3 of those. Sure.
And a Santini Air Jet Ranger to go with it.
Oh yeah, that would be very rare. Yeah, that was the red, white, and blue. It looked good. Oh,
yeah, the one with the stars on it. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a good looking helicopter. I missed that show. That show was so cool. Yeah, I was always in awe watching that show as a kid. I know now. I look back, I'm like, none of that was real. It was also fake, but
yeah, it was fake, a little bit cheesy, but it was such a cool show at the time.
It was. So you're into airplanes now. Have you branched out into, and I think it's pretty clear based on what you got behind you, you've got EDFs, you've got probably scale, you've got a little bit of pattern-esque airplanes. Is there anything you prefer?
Yeah, everything.
Okay. Fair enough.
Probably, I like scale probably the most. I really do like scale aircraft. So that's probably the number one thing. And then I also really like EDFs. Jets. I have quite a few jets as well. So scale and EDFs, even scale EDFs. And then after that, kind of whatever fits my fancy. I like some sport planes. I like multi-engine planes, multi-motored, whatever you want to call it. I do some glider stuff too. Kind of whatever fits my fancy. But probably number one thing is scale. I like in scale warbirds.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think a lot of people feel similar that scale warbirds and scale EDFs, and that's kind of showing, the market shows that's what's hot right now. That's in part because obviously foam has come a long way, power systems have come a long way, and now we can put them into, like, the latest EDF jets are just unbelievable. And then also our latest warbirds, like our 1.5 meter Mustang. I don't know if you've seen one of those in person, but man, it looks awesome and it flies amazing. Amazing.
Yeah, I think I saw one for the first time. Has invasion stripes on it?
It does. It's the blue and
Yes.
silver.
Yeah, I saw one the first time this past weekend. It looked really nice. The gentleman was flying it around, and it was a good size model.
It is. It's pretty big. It's almost like a 50, 60 size glow engine sized model, 1.5 meter wingspan. So pretty big.
Yeah, it was really nice.
That's one thing I always like try to point out to people, that wingspan doesn't always tell the whole story. So that's 1.5 meter, and a turbo timber is 1.5 meter, and an apprentice is 1.5 meter. But that thing is it's a much bigger overall airplane, a whole other class of airplane. I look at the battery size. That's a 6S 5000. Timber is a 3S 2200, 4S 2200.
Yeah.
That's a very big different class of model, even though the wingspan is about the same. So,
it's like saying, it's like saying a pickup truck and a sports car both have 4 wheels, therefore they're same, right?
Yes. Of course, they're both cars or vehicles, so to speak, but very different classes and very different categories. So again, that's what I love about airplanes, is just the variety. And Kyle, I think you're probably seeing that too, huh? With the airplanes versus helis.
Yeah. So I'm trying to figure out what I'm doing the most of right now. Like for this summer, I've been getting more into EDS basically because my skill level allows it now.
Right.
But, warbird, my favorite thing to really fly, and actually just especially at a flying field, is warbirds. Just because the scale realism, the look of it, the inherent difficulty to some extent, you're not just putting around and slam it down. But I think EDFs is kind of my next big venture from here.
So. Very cool. Yep. So now a part of your progression in the hobby has been associated to technologies like SAFE, in particular, AS3X. So I do want to ask Fitz, this is a loaded question I like to ask all of our guests, even though it puts them in the hot seat. How do you feel about technologies like SAFE and AS3X?
Oh, well, I think all our planes should have a string attached to them and Morse code to fly. I think they're actually very useful technologies with some minor caveats.
Right.
As an instructor at my club, I've had to deal with a lot of people coming up with, for example, your Apprentice S or Apprentice aircraft, which I think is probably the best trainer aircraft out on the market. I think is the Apprentice, and it has the SAFE and the AS3X and that kind of stuff on it. And it is the SAFE is great for very low time pilots that are getting in to build up their not only just experience, but their, what do you call it? The
muscle memory and all that kind of
muscle memory, but also to build up their not ego, but their I'm at a loss of words for all of a sudden, to make them feel better in their flying ability, right? Confidence, that's the word I'm looking for. And it's very useful for them to get out and learn very quickly how to fly the airplane, and it prevents them from over controlling and that kind of stuff. But it's also something that they have to be careful not to get too reliant on as they progress to go into more advanced models. Right. And so as I train them, I slowly wean them off, or at least trying to reduce the amount of safe mode that they're using, so that they can handle a wider variety of aircraft, because not everything they're going to fly is going to have safe mode on it.
Right.
And so they need to learn, and they want to do aerobatics too. And so they're going to need to learn how to fly the aircraft well. So SAFE is great for beginners to build up their confidence, to handle maybe an aircraft they're not familiar with. And we've had discussions too with some of my friends. And also one thing we found SAFE mode is actually really good for is hand launching.
Yep.
If you're hand launching something, SAFE mode prevents you from doing anything really bad. Because I've had bad hand launches. I had one time I had a plane, and you know who you are in the chat. Somebody threw a plane for me. I would have ribbed somebody. And as soon as they let go, it immediately went inverted and into the ground. It was a little jet, and I had no hard feeling. I'm just joking with them, but it happened. But we were thinking, something, on safe mode, this would not have happened. It would have prevented from overbanking and would have done really well. So the technology is great, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how the technology evolves. And I think it's just like anything else, with great power comes great responsibility, right?
Right.
So and the AS3X, I think, is really good, especially for small aircraft, for the stabilization it provides. I know lots of people who just love by that. They swear by that. They say, I'm not going to fly this plane without some type of AS3X stabilization on it. And so I always gotten pretty good at setting that up for other people, making sure everything's running in the right direction and everything is doing well, and setting up gains and that kind of stuff. So I think it's been very beneficial for the hobby, and it definitely makes flying the UMX stuff much more accessible to people, especially on windy days, like Kyle had mentioned before. Flying in, if it's not ideal conditions, you can still fly. I have your little GB, and I've flown it on days that I should not have really been flying.
Yeah, it's a 2-ounce airplane, but you can fly it in 10-mile-per-hour winds because of AS3X.
In fact, one of my favorite planes of the UMX series is the Aero Commander.
Oh yeah.
I always love Aero Commanders, and that little guy, it's got way more power than it should have, and it's got the AS3X to help tame it down on windy days, and I just roll boring holes in the sky in that little bugger.
Yeah, it's funny. A lot of people say, not a lot. Some people say that doesn't have enough power.
What do you want, rockets on it?
I guess. It's interesting to see the way that the market has progressed. 5 years ago, that would have been insane performance. But now people are like, nope, I want 3S. I want that airplane on 3S with 30% more power. That makes me happy, which is why a lot of our models, ultra micros, were creeping towards 3S. Mid-size models, we got 3S and 4S for the most part. And then the next step up, which would have typically been 4S airplanes, we're now putting 6S and a lot of that stuff to make the kind of overall market happy, which I admit, I love having the power. Do not get me wrong. I love punching it and going straight up no matter what the model is. But I think people have kind of gotten this expectation you need that much power to fly. You do not need that much power to fly. I used to fly electric airplanes that I converted with brushed motors and NiCads and nickel metals. Then their thrust to weight ratio was like 0.4 to 1. And now we're at 1.4 to 1 with unlimited vertical. And, I think unfortunately for a lot of guys learning in the hobby today, they have so much power, they don't really learn how to fly on the wing. They learn to fly on the prop. Yeah, and that's okay to some, as long as all the models you fly have that, I guess it's okay. But if you ever come across an older model, I saw this a number of times. Guy, learned to fly the last couple of years, everything they have is overpowered. Then they buy something that came out 10 years ago, like an old school airplane, and they go to fly it and they can't fly it because it doesn't have enough power, they say. But, you put it in the hands of an experienced pilot, no problem. So, yeah, it's an interesting dynamic in the industry today. And, the technology, I feel the way that you do. I've been in the hobby a long time, and I learned the old-fashioned way. I don't think that's practical for everyone. In a perfect world, you would go to a flying field, you'd have an instructor, and you'd have an airplane. Even if it doesn't have AS3X or Safe Select, fine, or Safe, that's fine. Learn to fly on a buddy box and progress from there. But a lot of people don't have that help available. And then Safe can make it possible to learn to fly on your own. Or even if you learn to fly with an experienced pilot, maybe you're out there one day and they're not there. You can use Safe as kind of a tool in case you get in trouble. They can, save the airplane with Safe, just like the instructor would have saved it for you. But my goal is always to, same with you, get the guy off of Safe as quickly as possible. So they're using Safe as a kind of a fallback, not the crutch to keep them in the air, if they can avoid it. So
yeah, that's true. And I was able to solo some of my students earlier because of the Safe technology. I said, I would tell them, okay, you are cleared to fly on your own solo as long as you keep it in safe mode. And then we will progress later on to more advanced flying as we take the Safe off or reduce it in its control authority. And that way that he can still go out and fly on his own if I'm not available or somebody else, another instructor is not available, and get time on the sticks, build the muscle memory and learn the skills, and then and not be held back by, I gotta wait for an instructor, he's not here, that kind of stuff. So I think it does speed up your learning progression and learning to fly.
It does, Yes, there are a lot of other tangible benefits, even for an experienced pilot. You fly through the sun and lose orientation. It's nice to have Safe on a switch so you can flip it into Safe and regain your composure and your eye contact with the airplane again, and go from there. Now, granted, you should not fly through the sun. Trust me. Do not do that. I've done it. It's bad. But Safe saved my bacon twice. I can tell you that for a fact.
It's funny you mention that. It actually saved a plane I had once. I don't normally fly with Safe, but it was a review plane I had. So I had set up Safe just to get an idea so I can talk about how it flies on Safe.
Right.
And I was flying, and this was a Taileron controlled plane, and something happened to one of the Tailerons. And it had gotten to the point it was almost unflyable. I was going to crash it. Plain and simple. I was losing it. And then I remembered, hey, wait, let me flip the Safe mode on. I flipped the Safe mode on, and that stabilized it enough for me to get it back down on the ground. because something catastrophic had happened on it, and SAFE was at least able to stabilize it and prevent it from over banking and over pitching. So
Yes.
even if you're an experienced pilot, I would recommend setting up the SAFE mode as a get out of jail free card kind of thing.
It is. It can save your bait, even in a mechanical failure, as long as you have some control still. SAFE can work a lot faster than we can. It reacts, many thousands of times a minute, right, or seconds even. So, that we can't keep up with that. It'll keep it level for you, which is why I recommend to guys, even if you are an experienced pilot, have it activated, put it on a switch so you can turn it on and off. But let's say it's like a really bad crosswind or something. Instead of fighting the airplane to the ground, turn on SAFE. It'll reduce your workload. It won't land the airplane for you, but it'll make it a heck of a lot easier for you to land it.
Yeah.
All it takes is one bug to attack you while you're flying.
Yes.
And you'll appreciate having SAFE.
I agree. I've had gnats in my face. Yep. And I've had to turn on SAFE so I can shoo them away and so I can run away and then turn it back SAFE off and fly around.
I've fallen down once. I was flying and I tripped over something and fell on the ground. And so I'm lying on the ground trying to fly the plane because I, couldn't get back. I didn't have time to get back up again. So yeah, weird things can happen.
So SAFE would have helped. Exactly. There's a good opportunity for flip on SAFE, put the stick in the corner, and it would just make, basically a circuit until you can kind of get back up and see the plane again. So yeah, that's why I always recommend use SAFE Select if you can. Well, so all of our trainer airplanes that are SAFE equipped have the full version of SAFE, which is beginner mode, intermediate mode, experienced mode, because we want people to make that progression to get away from SAFE if they can, as often as possible. But all of our more experienced airplanes now, or not all, but a lot of our bind and fly models in particular have SAFE Select. SAFE Select is basically like beginner mode on our trainers, and then you have it on a switch. So it's SAFE Select, AS3X. And AS3X is kind of like experienced mode on a trainer where there's no limitations. You can do whatever you want. I really recommend that people don't poo-poo it. If you've been in the hobby a long time, there are tangible benefits. And we also don't want people to only learn to fly with it. We want people to progress past it, but have it as a fallback tool, or even for an experienced guy, have it as a backup plan, just in case. So, we got a couple comments in here. There's a nice one from Flycam DFW. Thanks for the shout out. This is a great video. Fitz is great to listen to. That's great. Yeah, I can tell you the passion you've got for the hobby is fantastic. The passion you have for aviation, it comes through very clear. And I really appreciate that myself because I love all things that fly. I love aviation. I know Kyle loves all things motorsports.
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah.
How do you feel about airplanes?
Oh, so my parents were actually met in the Air Force. So there was always some, interest in planes, but, it wasn't ever really accessible to me. And then I was so into racing growing up that moving into surface was the obvious choice. And, I still love racing. It's just now having two kids, me disappearing for an entire day to do even a club race is just not really feasible. So it's great to be able to grab 2 or 3 models or 2 or 3 helis and just head out to the field for, an hour or two, come home, and you haven't missed a whole day, with the kids. So that's kind of been, I get harassed a lot now at work by the surface guys because I do so much air stuff, but they don't get that, when I'm gone from, 7 a.m. till midnight, it's not great, I miss a lot of stuff. So. Right.
Yeah. You used to be the car guy and now you're the everything guy. Yep. And I'm an air guy technically. I like car stuff. I raced cars way back in the day and I kind of miss it, but I'm like you. I can't keep up with it. To go to the races all day, but also to stay on top of the equipment and the setups and the skills. It's so hard to be competitive at racing RC cars. Truly competitive. You're going to go and have fun, but you're going to lose.
Yeah. A lot of it is, there's so much inherent talent, but nowadays a lot of the racing is won in the pits, with tire saucing and, unsafe charging practices and a little bit of tomfoolery. Possible prescription medication or lack thereof prescription. So a lot of that has, kind of shied away a lot of the beginners from getting into it.
It is. It's a big hurdle to get over to get to that level. That is one of the, and that's the thing about airplanes. Over the years there were competitions, but a lot of competitions in our hobby have died off, and it's really more just about the fun than it's ever been, which I really like about the hobby. I competed a little bit in pattern and IMAC, and in helis also, but even back then it was hard to keep up. Now I couldn't even imagine with the people at the highest levels. Like, could you imagine competing against Jace or on the heli side of things, the new guys that are flying helis these days?
Yep.
I'll never be that good. So here's a loaded question. always like to ask this one. So I don't know if Fitz has one, but Fitz, what's your favorite Horizon Hobby airplane?
Oh, well, that's a tricky question because the ones I have, each one has its really good parts.
Yeah.
The one that kind of comes to mind, though, I think is probably the most used one I have is probably the Turbo Timber.
Mm-hmm.
And I say that because I think out of the box, it probably has the most utility of the planes you sell, and that it comes with a pair of floats, and so you can fly it off of the land and water. It's good for 3 and 4S. It's a really, really nice flying plane. I have a lot of fun flying it in any conditions. If it's a calm day, you can kind of tear up holes in the sky and kind of just have fun with it. On a windy day, you could practice flying backwards with it.
Mm-hmm.
I've flown it off of water. It's a really fun plane to fly off of water as well. I think it's not the fastest plane. It's not the most aerobatic plane, but it does lots of stuff really, really well. I think it's probably one of the most fun sport plane I have that Horizon makes, I think, in my opinion.
Well, it's one of our best selling airplanes for a reason. And I think it's because it is very versatile and it has a wide flight envelope and almost any skill level can enjoy it. I know some guys have learned to fly with it and that's okay. I get that. I personally wouldn't recommend it as a first airplane, but as a second airplane, no problem. Perfect second airplane.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great model. So we got another shout out for you here, Fitz, from Hal Rufner.
Hey,
Fitz is a great pilot and a great person. He will take the time to help people. Yes.
I know Hal. Actually, I helped Hal a few days ago with some stuff. He's one of the local guys, and he reached out to me and said, "Hey, would you mind coming out to the flying field and give me some help and stuff?" And I had no problem with that. Hal's a real nice guy. He did something really nice. He detailed his planes. He actually painted them and weathered them stuff, and it looked really, really good. It's a small world. I didn't know he was listening. But thanks, Hal. I appreciate it.
And I see Jacob keeps asking if we'll make a Sky Van. I don't know, man. That's another one that I'm pretty sure I can't get the other guys convinced is something the world needs a model of. And then I don't think we can help you with this, that your hair looks like a dead animal on your head. You're going to have to probably address that on your own, man.
Okay. Sounds like a personal problem.
Yeah. But I do want to point out True Still Matters. He asked a question earlier in the show about prices. We'll get to that here at the end. But he asked this question, what's the best beginner jet? Fitz, do you have a feeling on that? And then let's get also Kyle's thoughts.
Oh, that's another kind of loaded question. First of all, if you're going to go into jets, you don't want to be a beginner.
Mm-hmm.
Be very comfortable flying high-speed sport planes, particularly of low-wing, high-speed sport planes. Yeah. And then if you're comfortable with flying that kind of aircraft in any orientation, and then you'll take the jets pretty easily without just some minor nuances. Now, that said, there are some jets that are really good for low-time pilots, and I've had experience with a few of them. Now, I have to admit, some are from Horizon, some are not.
There's a lot of them out.
I did find your Viper jet was really good.
Right.
I have one guy that's actually fairly low-time pilot, and because it has the S3X in a safe mode, that's actually was actually a pretty easy plane to fly. It was the way it's set up really well. Sometimes on jets, getting the safe mode tuned in can be a little bit of an issue at first until you set up all your controls right. But that one seemed to be pretty good right out of the box. So the person was able to fly it in safe mode, do really well. After a couple of running commentary on landings, he was able to do really well with it, and it was cleared pretty easily to fly by himself. And this is somebody who's only had maybe a couple other planes in his arsenal. So that one I think makes a really good beginner jet.
I agree. Yeah, not for a beginner, but for a first jet.
For a first jet, yes, it does. I had no problem with that one.
Yeah. So how about you, Kyle? You started with something different, right?
Yep. So the F-15, the 64 mil. I would still stand by it. So the reason I would say the F-15 is because it's really simple. You know, it's not a full house jet. There's no flaps. You can either land with the gear, land without. The reason also is because it's so affordable. You know, you can test the waters and you're not, crashing a $500 jet into the ground. I've crashed at F-15 several times, but it was repairable, fixable because it is such a simple plan form. It's not overly complicated, and you can still fly it slow, you can fly it fast, you can use Safe Select to hand launch. It has a lot of advantages for it being such a simple, basic design, really.
Right. Yeah. So I would say that it depends on your the space you have to fly, and then maybe your price band, how much you want to spend, and maybe what batteries you have. So I've got 3 top choices, and starting with the UMX, we have the UMX MiG 15, which is a very small jet. It's a little small for everybody to see comfortably, but if you have a very small space, like let's say a soccer field, that's a great airplane. It does have safe. It doesn't have the power to weight ratio of a lot of the larger EDFs, so you kind of have to fly it more on the wing. But that's a good first jet in a small size, low price, about $130 buy and fly basic, 2-cell, $8 battery. The 64 millimeter F-15, fantastic for sub $200, larger airplane. You can fly it at a soccer field. You really probably need a couple soccer fields if you're an inexperienced pilot or a flying field, but you can fly that either hand launch or with a fixed gear. It doesn't have retracts. It doesn't have rudders. It doesn't have flaps. That's to keep it simple. And that keeps the price down. It also runs on a 4-cell 2200, which is a very common battery that a lot of us have. If you have a turbo timber, you probably have a 4-cell 2200. That's the battery right there. So that's a great flying airplane. And it kind of is like a lifting body almost. It doesn't have a lot of wing area, but the whole fuselage lifts, and it allows you to kind of high alpha and come in pretty slow for an easy landing. The Viper is, in my opinion, the best full house first jet. It's got retracts, it's got flaps, capable of over 100 miles per hour at full throttle. Like I think mine hits almost 120 in level flight, which is pretty impressive. Almost unlimited vertical. But also, I've flown a lot of jets and a lot of airplanes. That is just a phenomenal flying airplane. It is like almost flying a pattern airplane as a jet. And at the same time, it slows down more than most jets and flies faster than most jets. So it's got a very wide flight envelope. It's easy to put together. I like the way it looks personally. I think it's a sharp looking airplane. It's more expensive though, and it takes a more expensive battery, and you definitely need to fly that at a flying field. You're not going to be flying that thing at a soccer field. So those are my 3 recommendations, at least within our lineup. There's some other models out there from other brands that are also, suitable for a first jet. Those are all great though, because they all have in the Bind and Fly basic version, Safe Select and AS3X, which are really good tools to have to make it easier to fly in the wind. That's AS3X. And then to make it easier to fly in general is Safe, especially if you get into trouble. So yeah, highly recommend all those airplanes as a first jet. And then real quick, I forgot to mention this when we were talking about the Timbers. We recently released a video called Behind the Innovations for the Timber. So Fitz, I don't know if you've seen that, but if you haven't, you should check that out. Guys that maybe haven't seen it, I believe that's on the Horizon Hobby Products channel. And you can hear about the Timber, where it came from Matt Andren, how we got to all the Timbers we have, why we keep coming out with Timbers. I know people give us a hard time. They think we make too many Timbers, but we're not done with it yet. You should watch that video if you kind of want a sneak peek on what maybe we're coming out with down the road. So cool video, a little bit of behind the scenes, great airplane for a lot of reasons. And then, yeah, I think, beginner jets are hot right now. Everybody wants to try their hand at a jet. And, I will say this, don't be discouraged. If you get jets and it's not your thing, maybe your skills aren't there, or maybe you're just not enjoyable to fly, don't be discouraged. They're not for everyone. Just like warbirds aren't for everyone, just like gliders aren't for everyone. There's definitely a significant learning curve associated with flying jets comfortably, especially the larger, faster, more complex scale jets in particular.
Yeah, the not having the prop blowing on control surfaces is a big change, going from that to, and the lag of waiting for thrust. You can't just come on the runway and go, oh, it's stalling. Maybe no, it's probably too late at that point. You need to be on the power.
You learn power a lot.
Yeah. That goes to the flying on the wing and not brute force that we were talking about earlier.
Yep.
Exactly. So let's see here. Yeah. So that's a great story right there from True Still Matters. He did it on his own, and he actually did have an instructor with a wireless buddy box too, which is kind of nice. So yeah, Safe is a great tool for a lot of people. And I think especially if you're moving into a new category like jets, it's nice to have that to fall back on just in case. So this is whatever happened to the scale flying. J3 Cub going 90 miles per hour. Yeah, we kind of talked about that a little bit earlier, Robert. But everybody seems to think you need a 1-to-1 or 2-to-1 thrust to weight ratio and 100 mile per hour level flight speed. Yeah, the good news is even if we give you that power, you don't have to use it. You can either throttle back, put 1 cell less in, 3 cell instead of 4 cell. and enjoy some more scale flying. I like scale flying myself, but I'll admit, if I got the power, it's kind of nice every once in a while to punch it and go straight up just because you can.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I flew when I did the Horizon Insider with the Night Timber that I think just went live Tuesday, the first flight I actually had a 3S plugged in because doing the video and the intro, I wanted just to have the lights on, didn't want to kill a 4S, and I was flying it, and like a minute in, I'm like, it just doesn't feel right. You know, it was still aerobatic, it'd still fly. And I landed, I'm like, I bet that was that freaking 3S pack I brought. And sure enough, I pulled the 4S out, and I'm like, here we go.
Yes, it's a lot more power with 4S. There's a big difference between 3S and 4S. It doesn't seem like it would be, but the power difference is quite substantial. The thrust to weight ratio goes up a lot. Of course, your flight time goes down because now you're pulling more current, so you got to watch out for that. EDFs are a whole different animal, and that's one downside I think with EDFs is you don't get a ton of flight time relative to your typical prop job airplane, and so there are pluses and minuses to jets. So Fitz, another question for you about our airplanes. Have you had your eye on any of our airplanes? Are there any that you would like to try sooner than later?
Yeah, that Oscar.
Oh yeah,
That's nice. It's a big. I actually saw one at a fly-in a week or two ago, and that's an impressive model. That was really nice. I saw it at the AMA Expo too as well. I like Japanese aircraft, so that really that kicked my fancy. But as far as something more realistic, you've got a couple of nice that came out that you have the Citation jet.
Yeah,
really nice.
Citation. Yep,
that's really nice, and the Twin Otter too. That was also a nice plane that popped up. Trying to remember anything else that you guys trying to keep track of everything that's come out.
We come out with a lot. I think a lot of guys forget because they always get, every time we announce something, there's some people that hate it, some people that love it, and there's a bunch of people in between. But every couple weeks we come out with something new, and it could be anywhere from a giant scale Warbird to an ultra micro trainer to a mid-size EDF or another Timber or another P-51, as everybody says we do. But you're right. It's hard to keep up with. Even I forget sometimes all the stuff we have to come out. I have to make a list for myself because a lot of times, almost every time we release a product now, people go, oh, another this, oh, another that. And then I post the list and they go, oh, you're right. I forgot about all those other ones you came out with that are not that.
Yeah, I just remember we were talking about jets, that your new A10, the 64 millimeter one, I've heard really good things about that. Apparently that's a really hot rod.
Yep. So that's an airplane that if that airplane came out 3 years ago, and there are other 64 millimeter A10s out there, we would have brought it out for 4S because back in the day, 3 years ago, that was normal performance. But now we're like, you know what? People aren't going to be happy with 90 miles per hour on 4S. No. They need 120 miles per hour on 6S. So that's why we set it up for a 6S power system. And man, it rips. It is unbelievable. Almost unlimited vertical, over 100 miles per hour. Plus, because it's an A10, you can slow that thing down to like a crawl on approach. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I was surprised that when it came out, you said it was a 6S. I was like, a 6S and a plane this size? That's very unusual. And it's kudos to you guys for being able to cram that kind of size battery back into a relatively small plane like that. That's really good. And an A10, who knew an A10 is great.
A10 is a great platform, exactly. It's got that kind of almost Hershey bar wing. Yeah. It's got quite a bit of wing area. I wouldn't recommend it as even though it's relatively easy to fly for a jet, I still don't recommend it as a first jet because it's complex. It's got 2 motors, retracts, flaps. It's fast. It's kind of, because it's gray, it can be hard to see sometimes. So I think visibility, speed, simplicity, these are all things that kind of, I think if you're a very experienced pilot, if you've been flying for many, many years and you've flown high performance airplanes, that could easily be your first jet, no problem. But I recommend it as like a second jet, I would say.
I'm still waiting for the day where I flip the retracts on something while I'm taxiing out just because I'm being stupid.
I've done. Well, the nice thing with the electric retracts is they're kind of slow. Back in the day when we had servo-driven retracts or mechanical retracts that were very fast, you would flip it and the next thing, it's on the ground. You're like, oh, crap. At least with the electric one, I've done it where I flipped it and it starts going, and it's sinking. I'm like, no. And it stops. It's like, oh, thank goodness. And then some of them, they have the overcurrent protection. So when they get loaded up, they actually stop on their own. So that is kind of nice. But you will definitely do it at some point. I did it just a couple weeks ago with the A10. Yep, I'm embarrassed to admit it. I did. I messed at the bottom of the airplane because I'm like, what? I was honestly, I'll tell you what I was doing. I was playing with assigning the reassigning my safe select switch, and I wanted to put it on the B switch. I didn't mean to put it on the A switch. I just bumped it, and I didn't flip it enough times to assign safe, and it just put the gear up. And then I'm like, oh, that was stupid. So minor thing, but it happens. So let's see. Hey guys, now I think now's a great time. If you have any questions for Fitz, please bring those up in the comments here. You can comment on YouTube. You can comment on Facebook. We'll see both here. We can ask specific questions of Fitz, his background, what he likes, what he doesn't like. So Fitz, you did mention that you're working on a review model for Model Aviation. Is it one that you can talk about? Is it already out?
Oh yeah, this is it's made by a company called Old School Model Works, and they make a series of laser cut kits, and this one's called the Javelin. And here I can show you. There's my messy workbench, but you can see there's a fuselage sitting on a desk.
Yeah.
And so I'm in the sanding phase at the moment. So that's going to take a while for me to sand everything down and get everything working. So I'm not sure when this will be out in the magazine, but it's been a pretty good build. And like as I mentioned before, I like building kits, and so it's been nice to. So it's interesting to see how wood kits have evolved over the years. You know, even though this is sort of a cottage industry, there's still some really good engineering that guys are putting into their designs to make it easier to build, and interlocking structures and some thought into it. So it's been an interesting build so far.
Oh, sorry, I just got a bunch of email alerts here, but I see some fun questions coming through here. Here's a good one that's not even well. So Mary Boozer, Wesley, hey man, how's it going? He asked, "What's your next balsa plane?" Which you just showed us there.
Yeah.
And then Jacob, being funny again, he wants to know what your favorite sandwich is.
Oh, sandwich. So it doesn't include hamburgers, right? This would be more deli type sandwiches. I don't know.
I guess probably, yeah.
I'd probably say a Reuben.
A Reuben, all right.
I really
That's a
like
good
Reuben
choice.
sandwiches. Yes.
Yeah, if it's done well, it is good stuff. And this is a loaded question a little bit.
Oh wow.
John
Right.
Potts, if we had a discontinued Horizon Hobby airplane that we would bring back, what would you like it to be?
Man.
We need to make that just a general poll for
Yeah,
answers.
there's a lot of stuff. The VTOL Bonanza. I like
Oh
Bonanza.
yeah, that was a cool airplane. The E-Flight
Yeah.
Bonanza 15E, I think we called it back in the
They
day.
need to come back.
That was a cool airplane. Yes, I would argue that we definitely should have a Bonanza in the lineup, preferably one you could even switch between the regular tail and the V-tail. That would be pretty cool.
That would be fantastic. Yes.
I don't know that we could. So I will say, I'll bring up a couple of points here that a lot of people don't know about behind the scenes. The price of labor has gone up considerably overseas, and wood airplanes, the materials didn't used to be terribly expensive and the labor wasn't terribly expensive. But over the years, balsa has become much more expensive. The labor to build a balsa airplane has become much more expensive. So we literally can't really bring a small wood ARF to market anymore. Like we had, back in the day, we had a lot of E-Flight, not ultra micro, but like, I would say like 3-cell 2200 sized wood ARFs. That Bonanza was 15 size, like 48-inch wingspan or something like that. Those airplanes are anywhere from $100 to $150 as an ARF. If we sold them today as an ARF, they'd be $200 or $250.
Wow.
And then that's no motor, no ESC, no servos. You have to put it together. And so unfortunately, because of things that are outside of our control, it's just not practical to bring small wood ARFs back. I'd say wood ARFs start to make sense around 40 to 60 size these days, because you can do a 40 size ARF for about, we have some in the Hangar 9 lineup that are like $180, give or take. Because what's funny is the labor to make a 40 size ARF and the labor to make a 3S 2200 sized ARF is about the same, and the material is not a much big difference in cost there. So yeah, unfortunately, I don't think smaller wood ARFs are going to come back anytime soon, even if we'd like them to. But we're looking at it. We're trying to find ways to make it possible if we can. That Bonanza would be a great candidate, but I also think a Bonanza in foam with the sexy, curvature of the fuselage and retracts and lights, that thing would be pretty sharp.
That'd be really nice, yeah. Especially interchangeable tails.
Yes, I think the interchangeable tail would be the sweet spot of that.
Would be awesome.
Yeah.
Just a side note, I heard that reason why balsa prices have gone up, one of the reasons apparently is because of windmills.
Yep.
A lot of them are hitting the end of life, and they've had to replace the blades on windmills. And there's so many out
Exactly.
there that it's a supply and demand.
Yes, and it's a natural. Obviously, you can't make balsa. You can grow it, but it takes many years. South American balsa is the best. It's also the most expensive and the hardest to get. A lot of the ARFs the last few years that we've come out with that are balsa are actually using Russian balsa wood, and then also some balsa wood even from Vietnam, and it's a lot heavier. I wouldn't say a lot heavier, but it is heavier, so it's more dense. It's not as lightweight as what you can get from South America, which is kind of why, if you guys remember back in the day, like SIG and Midwest, they had different lines of balsa. You had your contest grade, you had your regular stuff. Contest grade's a lot lighter for the same size material as the other stuff. Also cost more.
I just noticed somebody in the chat mentioned the Havilland Mosquito.
Oh yeah.
I actually have one. It's hanging up there, and that's a wonderful little plane.
It's a neat
you
airplane.
just brought it up. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
And now that one I think it's designed for 3S, but it will fly on 4S. Ask me how.
It's always risky. Some of our power systems are I'll be honest. A lot of our power systems that we came out with, especially around the time that airplane came out, were really under spec. We were not pushing them at all. We purposely overbuilt them so people wouldn't burn them out. Some of them did work on 4S fine, as long as you throttle back. Now, not all of our power systems, like the Twin Otter is a great example. You cannot just stick a 4S battery in there. You will smoke the motors or the ESCs. You will. But a lot of our airplanes, when we can, we're trying to make them 3S and 4S compatible because a lot of guys have both. 4S is like the new 3S, but a lot of dudes have 3Ss still. So there is that. But yeah, so it's very, very interesting So Jason, John, you've come in here before. We'll just block you as usual. Unfortunately, yeah, he's still upset about our service in the UK, which again, we've resolved our service in the UK through Logic RC. Our distributor there handles all of our service, and a number of people that have in the chat here have already used them for good service in the UK. So, that said, there was a question earlier in the chat. We'll talk about a little bit later at the end about the STX radio, but power systems, it's a tough thing. We try our best to make, again, everybody wants more power, but we also want to get good flight time. We also want the motors to last, especially on a hot day. And so I will say our power systems now are probably pushed a little more to the limit. So I'd always recommend guys be very cautious. Trying to run one cell more or a little bit bigger prop, be very careful. There's a lot of questions in here about, what's the best time to fly an RC airplane?
Anytime.
I like the late evening myself. Usually it calms down, it cools off, and it's just quiet. Not as many people out and about. So I like that. I like the early morning as well. But the problem I've noticed is a lot of, especially around here in Illinois, in the morning, like right at dawn, it's calm, and then it starts to pick up. The wind starts to pick up right away. It's kind of a bummer.
Yeah, that kind of goes in hand. One of the questions that I wrote down that was a good one was, what wind speed are we comfortable flying in? And I'm assuming that was kind of directed at each of us.
Yeah, I think it is very much personal preference. It's also dependent on the size of the model, the weight of the model, the airfoil. Does it penetrate wind well? So a great example is our E-flite Valiant. That airplane has a very unique airfoil on it that just penetrates. Even though it's relatively small and lightweight, I fly that thing in a lot more wind than I'd even fly, say, the Turbo Timberin. All of our models that are equipped with AS3X, I feel like you can fly them more comfortably in more wind because that's the point of AS3X.
Yep.
But if it's more than like 10 or 15, I don't usually go out and fly myself. It's just not as enjoyable as sub 10 miles per hour.
Yeah. I flew a little bit earlier today trying to make a video, and it's windy.
Yeah.
It's like 20 mile an hour wind.
See, that's not fun.
Yeah.
It was hard to make the other thing is, it's hard to, for what our job is, make the plane look good. You can't, because it's all over the place. Even with AS3X, there's only so much it can do, when it's 20 mile an hour wind gusting to 30.
Yes. How do you feel about that? Flying the wind?
I tend to live a little on the wild side, so I've been known to fly on pretty windy days. Even among my other club members, they know that me and the wind have a relationship. So I will try to pick the plane, as you mentioned, Jason, that if I know it's going to be a windy day, I'll pick a plane with a heavier wing loading and maybe a more power to weight ratio on it.
Yep.
And, something sleeker so it cuts through the wind a little better. So
Right.
I will adjust my arsenal to what the conditions are. But I know it's pretty busy. As long as it's not like a 90-degree crosswind, I usually will venture out just to get some flight time in, just have some fun.
That's a good point about crosswind. So the thing is that if the wind is right down your runway, or you can land and take off into the wind, it's a lot easier than if you're trying to land crosswind. I would say some rules of thumb to follow. If you're a beginner, avoid wind as much as possible. No matter how big your airplane is, wind is going to make your life more difficult as you're learning to fly. So avoid those days. Try to fly in calm weather if you can. I know some guys, they can't fly certain days of the week, and the days they can fly might be windy. If that's all you have, go ahead and do it. Strongly recommend AS3X if you can. And then depending on the direction of your, kind of typical winds, and then the direction of your runway, if you fly at a flying field in particular, that may dictate whether or not you have to deal with crosswind. And crosswind, it's a lot of extra work to land in crosswind. It really is. That's where safety come into play, or more importantly, buy real flight, turn the wind on, make it a crosswind, and practice the heck out of the simulator.
That's a good point. Yeah, because it's good to have some crosswind skills, because you may go to a fly-in and you don't have a choice. You're at the fly-in, they have a crosswind, you either fly or you don't, and you've already paid your money, so you want to fly. So learn how to land crosswind, use the rudder, and whatever, all the other tools you have at your disposal to make good landings.
And also one thing, because I was guilty of this when I was younger and I learned how to fly, I would always land left to right, because where I've learned to fly, the prevailing winds were that way. So it was very easy. So I went to another flying field that was oriented the other way, and I could not land right to left. I was like, this is just not, I don't feel good. And I was landing downwind, and the guys are like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I can't land left. So I taught myself to land the other way. Don't just turn around. If you're at the middle of a park, don't just turn around and keep landing the same way you normally do. Learn how to land left to right, right to left. Everybody has a stronger side typically. But try your best to learn beyond that if you can.
Yeah, that's very common at clubs. Yeah.
Very common. So Jim Ferguson, here's a good question. Can you fly in the rain?
At least a little while.
Can you? There's a can you and should you?
Right. Yes.
Technically, yes, but I would not recommend it at all. For various reasons.
It's very bad for your transmitter if water gets inside of course. That's one issue. Even if you were having something covering your transmitter, the airplane itself, whether it's foam, balsa, somewhat dependent there, but electronics, the motor, if water gets into these things, it can damage them. So my recommendation is no. Full-scale airplanes fly in the rain, but they're designed to be all-weather. They have gaskets, they have seals to make that possible. Our models are not really built to be all-weather models. They're built to be, they're kind of like the equivalent of water-resistant versus waterproof. So they might handle a little bit of rain, but if you soak the thing, it's probably going to stop working, or mechanically it'll fail in some way. So, yeah, something to watch out for. Tony is asking about a foamy PT-19. I love PT-19s. I love them. I wish we could have one. I think a balsa one would be really nice again. We had a balsa, if I'm not mistaken, not long ago. Yeah, I think it was a 450 sized. Yep. That might be a good one to come back. I'll have to bring that up with some guys. So, yeah, I don't see a whole lot of other questions, but I do want to. So, Kyle, it sounds like you wrote down some questions. Were any of those questions for Fitz specifically?
Not really. One that we kind of answered to an extent was someone asking what's the best STOL jet, which is kind of not possible, but maybe. And then just someone asking, the other one I penciled in was make a UMX air tractor.
Oh, yeah. I'm all for that. But just because I'm all for it doesn't mean it's going to happen. We got a large crew of guys that helps make the decisions on the products. But I'll tell you guys, the more and more we hear certain comments, even if it's something we've said no to, if you keep bringing it up, it has changed our mind. I can guarantee that has happened. Behind the scenes. I'm not going to tell you.
Tony?
But yes, Tony, X-Men guy, yeah, bring it. Yeah, you'd be surprised at the things we've changed our mind on. So, there's been a lot of things over the years that we didn't think the market really wanted, and after a while, and sometimes people beat us to market with it, and it took off, and we're like, dang it, we should have done that. And then maybe we do it down the road, either a different size or a different price or something like that. So
Yeah, I imagine that must be tough to try to anticipate what the market wants or what the users would like. I imagine it's sort of difficult.
it's very hard. And a lot of guys don't know this, but I was literally on a phone call right before this all started, one of our weekly meetings, and we're talking about projects 2 years from now, 3 years from now. That's how far out we have to be to plan the development process, because you have to CAD the airplane, you have to make a hand-carved sample, test that, maybe make a second one, go to tooling, test that one, test the electronics, get it certified. It's a long 18 to 24-month process for most of our airplanes. Yeah, very hard to look
stress
at.
testing.
Oh yeah, stress testing. Kyle,
One of the
helps
most
with
epic things you'll see that I hate that we've never shown is watching our guys stress test a plane. Because I watched David Payne stress test the 1.5 meter P-51. Oh my God.
that. It's usually full throttle,
Yes.
straight down
Yes.
from like as high as you can see it. Usually less than 400 feet, by the way. Straight down, full throttle, and just pull. Like as much elevator as you have, and it just pulls. And a lot of airplanes, they'll snap because aerodynamically that's the case. But what we're looking for is, does the airframe snap? Do the wings fold? Does the stab come off? Does the motor fly off the nose? Which it has happened. It has happened. And we've gone back and we for example, we've got a Hangar 9 airplane that's going to be out here not too long later this year that we did the stress. We thought it was done. They did the stress test. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, Kyle, and it came apart. So they had to redesign the wings, and now we just got new samples, and everything's good to go. So yeah, it'll be coming out here. It got delayed. I think it was supposed to be out about now, but we had to delay it a couple months to get a redesign of the wing done to make it ready for prime time.
Sounds like fun to try to break a plane in the air.
And they're doing it. They do it right in front of basically the runway, because in the event that it will fail, they don't want to have to walk out and get 5,000 pieces.
Because we used to go as far out as possible for safety reasons, but then we're like, man, then we got to go out there and the parts are everywhere.
I was wondering, do you wear like hard hats and stuff when you do that?
What? Yeah, maybe.
I stood under the roof.
You don't have to
the
answer
roof
that.
the kind of the pit area.
Oh,
I stood there.
yeah.
So Gary pointed out we do it from 399.9 feet.
Yes.
I agree. 399.95.
Yes. Stress testing is a very, very cool thing. And it's something that we didn't always do many, many years ago, because, I know there was this attitude of you should design an airplane to fly, not to survive abuse or a crash. But, over the years, we've all learned the lesson the hard way. Sometimes you don't mean to fly hard, you just do. Or sometimes, customers fly harder than some of our more experienced guys that have learned to kind of really be gentle on an airplane. And so we try our best to break airplanes. And I'll tell you, we're still surprised. We stress test airplanes, and you guys still find ways to break them that we never thought were possible. It happens all the time.
Nothing foolproof, because fools are geniuses.
Yeah, exactly. So did you have any other questions, Kyle, that you wrote down there?
No, that was the ones that I had penciled in that I thought would be good talking points. I know there's been other ones at the beginning, but it won't actually let me scroll all the way up.
Yeah, I forgot about that. It has that limitation. So I don't know if you remember that one about the STX transmitter, but that was the one
I was looking for.
He was in the UK, and so I think he's maybe looking for some service and support there, which Logic RC is our distributor there. They also handle our service. But can you speak to that? I know maybe there's some use cases for the STX where it has issues with maybe interference.
Yeah, I think the big thing, if you're having problems, is contact our product support team. Right now, with the call volume you're having, email is the best way to get a hold of them, productsupport@horizonhobby.com. And yeah, I mean, it's one of those, every once in a while, you're going to get an oddball that, we can't, these are still made by people. They're still shipping. There's things that can happen, damage, everything can't be perfect. So reach out to our product support team, and they'll definitely get you taken care of.
Yeah, and there are times when you might have a bad radio, a bad receiver, could be one of those. Or again, your environment might be more Wi-Fi. You might have more 2.4 activity in general. In fact, a lot of guys don't know this, but the reason we switched from DSM2 to DSMX was because once 2.4 became so prevalent that everybody was using it, and we went from having fun flies where only 5 or 6 guys were flying at once to having 50 guys flying at once, we had to switch to frequency hopping, so that way we didn't have as many issues with 2.4 interactions. So the STX and the lower end transmitters, a lot of times they don't have that same level of frequency hopping. And so that could be an issue in your area. So double check on that. Contact product support, our guys here in the US, or Logix guys over there in the UK, or even our Horizon Hobby guys in Germany as well. Reach any of them and they should be able to help you get through that issue. Yeah, for sure. And then, here's E-Powered RC. I remember this airplane, Mini Showtime. Anybody remember the Mini Showtime?
Yeah. Yeah.
That was back when we used to do 4D, we called it, where we put SFGs on airplanes so we could fly them on the side like they could fly on the wing. That airplane probably was maxed out at about a 350 watt power system, as he found out, unfortunately. That airplane was very, very lightweight. We tried to make it big and light, but it was kind of fragile, relatively speaking, especially by today's standards. So yeah, sorry you lost that one, man, because that was a good looking airplane and a good flying airplane, I always thought.
I have one actually. I picked up.
Really?
Yeah, it's hanging up there. I've never flown it.
Can you show us? Because I don't know. A lot of people probably don't know what it is. I know Kyle's like, I don't know what that is.
Can you?
There it is.
You see it?
Yeah, it's this one, right? Yeah, it's that one with the blue. I think it's purple on the bottom or blue on the bottom. Yep.
Yeah, I've actually haven't flown it yet. I was looking at it the other day as I need to get it flying. I just hung it up and been so busy with other projects.
So that was a Mike McConville design. We originally had a 90 size one, and then we scaled it down to the mini size for E-Flight. It's kind of like a pattern airplane, but also had extra large control surfaces, so you could do 3D flying with it. So again, was what we called 4D back in the day, where it was a pattern airplane that could do 3D and had a lot of side area when you put the SFGs on. And honestly, I don't like the way it looks with the SFGs, but man, with the SFGs on there, it really does fly amazing. Yeah, it really, really does. So that's a cool airplane. Another thing that I saw come up, and this might be good information too for you to learn, Fitz, is today we did have some airplanes go up in price. It's never a thing we like to do, guys. It happens on occasion. A lot of the models that went up in price are airplanes we've had out for more than a year now. A lot of them, like the Valiant, is much older, like almost 4 years old. And over time, a lot of the costs go up in labor, component costs, raw material costs, foam, so on and so forth. And so in order to continue selling an airplane longer term, we can't always absorb the price increases. We do have to pass those along. We try our best to minimize that, but some of those airplanes went up about $10, some of them $20 or $30. Don't be alarmed. It's not going to happen again to any other models. So whatever the prices are today is going to be locked in for almost every model for the rest of the year at least. So that does happen on occasion, guys, and we apologize. But if we didn't raise the price, we'd have to discontinue them. And we didn't really want to discontinue the Turbo Timber, for example. It went up $10, which isn't bad. The Valiant is a good example. It went up about $30, which is actually the price it was when it came out. It was originally $199. We dropped it to $169, which actually helped it get out there more. And more guys have learned to fly or learned how amazing that airplane flies. But in order to, it's been out for almost 4 years and everything's gone up in price for that airplane. So we did have to raise the price to $199. Still a good deal, I think. Still a very good deal for that airplane.
I think a lot of people also don't notice that our prices do drop through, right, as the life cycle of a product goes on. So you might see an increase, but it could still be less money than when it initially debuted.
Yes, that's a very, very good point. And usually, if in a perfect world, if everything happens the way we'd like it to, we usually buy the tooling up front. We pay for the molds. And then if we can pay that mold off within a year, a lot of times the second year we might lower the price. Sometimes that doesn't happen. If we don't sell enough, we don't pay back the mold that quickly. And then sometimes even after we pay off the mold, like the Valiant, the price has to go up because now the raw material and components have gone up in the last couple of years. So keep an eye out, though. We do sometimes have sales. We might have a sale coming up soon, possibly, on some of that stuff. So keep an eye out. But yeah, it happens, guys, on occasion. We apologize. But we chose to raise the prices on most of those models so we didn't have to get rid of them. So there is that. Better to have it here for a couple bucks more than to not have it at all. I just want to answer this question real quick because I do have some experience with this. So Drone Man Productions asked, answer want to know why you don't show in your STS video the GPS calibration, because what I found, it won't work unless you calibrate each time you fly. So it doesn't, if you change locations, yes, you need to calibrate it each time you change the location, especially if you go a very far distance. But in my experience, like that day that I flew for the video that you saw, I flew it about 6 times that day. And I only calibrated when I first got to the field that morning. I did not change the calibration at all. I didn't recalibrate it. And as long as I fly at that same field, I wouldn't have to recalibrate it. So if you are having to recalibrate, it's probably something else maybe related. There could be some magnetic interference within the area that you're in. Also, if you're concerned about it changing or the angle that it comes in on approach, that is sometimes not dictated by the GPS calibration. It's actually dictated by just wind, interactions with crosswinds in particular. It will kind of adjust its line and come in at a diagonal if there's a crosswind instead of coming in, parallel with the runway. It should still land on the same home point that you set if you're using the auto land function. But yeah, GPS is a complicated thing. It's cool. What you can do with GPS is amazing. You can have auto land. You can have the loiter, the holding pattern. You can have, what else do you get? Virtual fence. Great features, but with great power comes great responsibility. So having those functions in GPS means you got to calibrate, and then also you got to do extra steps to get the airplane in the air. So yeah, just something to look at. Let's see. Michael Klein, good question. How many more releases this year? Anybody want to take a gamble? Fitz, do you want to guess how many more airplanes we're coming out with this year? Oh, did you hear me?
I'm sorry, what was the question? You were breaking up for a second.
So the question is, how many more airplanes do you think we're going to come out with this year?
I predict one a month.
Close. Kyle, do you have a guess? I think you know.
I would cheat. Yeah, I could tell everyone. I could tell everyone everything in like 30 seconds if I wanted to.
But you won't, right?
No, I'd be not employed. So.
I see. The guys are guessing now.
There's a lot of big and a lot of popular releases coming up.
Yes, I will say this, that, COVID did slow things down, unfortunately. We lost a couple months, so there's a bit of a lull right now, but coming up here shortly, it's going to get real busy. And it's a little bit of everything, guys. It's trainers, it's all kinds of stuff, so don't be alarmed. If you see a new release and you don't like it, don't bash it, because you might like the one that comes right behind it. So just keep an open mind for us, guys, and pay attention to our website. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to our Facebook page. That's where you get a lot of alerts. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, subscribe to our mailing list. Everybody that's subscribed to those gets to see those new releases that Thursday when they go live. So make sure you're on all those. Also, to help support Fitz's channel, make sure that you sign up for subscribe to his channel, Hobby View, on YouTube as well. And it's not just subscribe. If you want to get alerts immediately when he posts new videos or when we post new videos, you got to mash the bell as well. So, we might have lost Fitz. I think his internet was
laggy. So
yeah, that happens. Sometimes. Yeah. So there are rumors of a GB True. Well, we've talked about other GBs, but at the moment, no immediate plans other than the UMX that we've got. Oh, looks like we got Fitz back.
Yeah, sorry about that. I don't know what happened to my
connection
or something.
It happened. Hey, we've already kept you very, very long today. And so, yeah, we're coming up on kind of the end of our time, guys. Usually we go to about 5 o'clock Central Time with these shows. But, yeah, more civilian planes. Yep, they're coming. A little bit of everything, guys. A little bit of everything. Yeah, any red planes coming soon? I mean, maybe, possibly.
Yeah, there's not a lot of red planes, are there?
I think there's only one that he's thinking of, is what I'm thinking. I know. Oh, there's a good answer. Best answer of the night. Enough to drive us crazy. Yeah. Yep, it's probably true.
There's only like 4 more timbers, though, the rest of the year. So.
Oh, well, I thought it was 3, but maybe you're right. Maybe it's 4. A biplane timber. Joseph Youngblood. Oh, clearly he likes biplanes. What is that? Looks like a Waco there in his avatar. So,
yeah,
very cool.
Couple Mustangs, 3 or 4 Cubs, 7 timbers.
Yes. So, Drone Man he was reiterating. So I didn't show how I calibrated the GPS in that video. That's a good point, and I think maybe we'll go back and make another video to show that it is pretty easy. The good news is we simplified it. And it's really just flipping the airplane over a couple times and then you're done. The manual covers it pretty well. I followed the manual step by step to do it. but I can see a video would definitely be helpful in that case. So it may not happen immediately, but we'll look into making a video for that here in the near future. So yeah. But again, I think we kept you very long, Fitz. Thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate having you on the show. Hopefully you get some new subscribers on your YouTube channel. And at the same time, I don't see any reason why we wouldn't send you some more airplanes to review for your channel if you're interested.
Oh, yes. Fantastic. Very much interested.
Yeah, I bet you wouldn't mind getting one of those A10s, huh?
Oh, I don't know. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Oh, that would be awesome.
Or, yeah. You got a long – oh, yeah. There's Francis. Red like Draco? I don't know. Maybe. Someday.
Draco. Yeah, thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it. If you haven't seen my channel, it's Hobby View, one word, on YouTube. I do also have a Facebook page, but YouTube is where it's at. Please give it a try. Leave me some feedback. I do look at all the messages and stuff, and appreciate everybody's viewership and patronage. I've got some really nice comments, and I'll continue to do it as long as people continue to watch, I guess, and have fun doing it. I'm a lifer in the hobby, so I love building and flying and making and not crashing, but other stuff.
Yes.
So,
well, we really appreciate it. And your passion, we can tell you're very passionate. Like you said, you're a lifer. I think like, myself and Kyle as well, we love this. It's our job, but it's also our hobby. For you, it's your hobby more than your job. But it's awesome that I know guys can support you by subscribing to your channel, watching your videos, and then the Facebook page, even if they go and like your Facebook page as well. I think it would be every little bit helps, right?
Oh yeah. Every little very much appreciated.
One.
Victor, we got you.
Hey, I got a new sub. All right.
Yeah.
Money well spent. No, just kidding. Yeah, appreciate I appreciate the questions people have been asking in the chat. I love interacting with people in the hobby, and answering questions and just seeing what people like to do. It's a lot of fun, and it's a big community, and I always enjoyed it.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for joining us. Special thanks to Kyle for joining us last minute as a co-host, keeping an eye on those comments. Really appreciate it, man. We'll probably have Kyle on again in the future here, either as a co-host or actually, I think we should have Kyle on. We can interview and talk to you about your history in the hobby as well, and your motorsports experience. And I know you like motorcycles.
I have a lot of ways to waste money.
Oh, yes. Fair enough.
Racing motorcycles? You sure you want to live?
Not racing them.
Oh. Oh,
so,
fantastic.
all right, guys, we're going to sign off for the show for this week. Don't forget, we're switching to Thursdays like we are now, 3 o'clock Central, so 4 o'clock Eastern, 1 o'clock Pacific. Every other Thursday will be a different show. So this week is the Air Hangout. Next week will be a Real Flight, and then Air Hangout, Real Flight, so on and so forth. So every other week, we're going to switch it to on Thursdays. Be sure to like and subscribe as soon as you can, and to get our alerts. Also, subscribe to our mailing list. That's a pretty exciting thing because that's where you're going to hear about the newest products first. So thanks again for joining us, everybody. Talk to you later.